last of the cabbage needs to come out. So let's do something with this. So I have a thin slab rolled out, and I went ahead and ran this leaf through at a thin setting, crushing down the spine, because I didn't want it to cut all the way through. So I think that's going to help. I'm going to fold it up, run it through something like this, and then we'll see what we get. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Ooh, that's pretty exciting. So it's pushed it in completely flat. I did not expect that. Where it cracked, it actually to push it all the way through and up flush. It's kind of interesting. So let me see if I can get it out in relatively one piece. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and use a needle tool first and cut this out. Okay. Okay. Well, I definitely think the spine, even though I crushed it, has gone all the way through. So it's completely cut through where it was thick. I really was not sure whether despining the leaf was critical. Still not sure I would have done it any different though. So this is what we have. There's some dark spots there where it actually are spores from the bottom of the leaf. And if I were to say that there was an unattractive spot, it would most likely be where there were holes in the leaf. See if I can show you one right there. It came through and I picked up a canvas texture on the top, and I do not want that. I don't know if I mind the bump, like the evidence that there was a hole there, but any little spots where there's a canvas texture, I'm going to take my thumb and just smooth them down. So I've gone ahead and freehanded up a piece to fill this in, and I'm just going to get a bit of a score along the edges. Okay, so rather than pick up the canvas and carry it over to where I want to set this balloon, I think it might be easier. I'm going to find the top center of it and set it right in the middle, and I'm going to see if I can get under it and just flop it over onto the balloon so we can transfer it. Alright, that looks good. And I was really debating, the more you let it stiffen up, the less detail you'll lose, but the downside is you'll have less of an opportunity to form it without cracking. So now I get to clean up all these little bits, and we'll let this firm up on the balloon. Okay, so here's what we have. I added a little bit of a kink to the leaf where the kind of the faux stem will be. Hopefully that'll make it just that much more interesting in terms of texture. But you can see I've sponged it off, trying to emphasize the natural texture of with a sponge, kind of pulling it out, and I got rid of probably 90% of the canvas. So now we let it dry. Well, it's been a little while waiting for this to dry, and I wanted to show you this has been a fail. I want to do it again, but I thought I'd show you what went wrong. So first of all, you can see I had a big deep area here that you saw me cut out and put in a piece to fix, and actually I'm encouraged by how it's turned out. I like how the texture turned out. I wish I could have cleaned it up a tiny bit, but I knew these cracks were deep and it was going to be fragile. But putting the legs on and then doing a final set and coming back and wanting to trim the legs, it just gave up the ghost. It's a real bummer, and I know better than to try to fix it by putting clay in, but of course I'm sitting there looking at it going, ugh, well, it's now or never, or I'm going to chuck it. So I tried to noodle it. It was a joke. That was never going to work. Too much differential. The clay was too dry, remoistening, whatever. So this is a fail. These little ugly spots, if you're wondering, are actually spores that were on the leaf. So they'll burn off. I'm not worried about that, but I did see that this leaf had these kind of spores on it, and I couldn't rub them off easily, but the clay pulled them off. So here is what I think the problem was. It's a twofold problem. Number one, I thought it was a great idea to run this leaf through the slab roller, and I knew that there was going to be an issue with really fat parts of the leaf pushing all the way through the slab. So I took the leaves and I ran them through the slab roller, squashed them all down first, thinking that was going to be a good idea. But obviously there were parts where it shoved all the way through. There are parts where it's really thin, and if I could have gotten this through glaze, it probably would have been fine, but I realized that I need that thickness. So I'm going to do it again. This time I'm just going to roll the slab. We're going to push the leaf into it and not get these tear through moments, hopefully. Put it on the balloon, put legs on it, and try again. So I've used like pony rollers, I think that's what you might call them, wooden rollers to kind of press these in. I've used rolling pins, but in the end, I'm not sure it needs that much. So I'm going to just feel where I can feel that there's air bubbles and work those out, and then I'll come back here with a rib, a metal rib, and I'll work my way kind of from the center out, like as if trying to follow the veins of the leaf a little bit, and I'll smooth this out on this side. And my plan is, once I have it smoothed out, I might do a real rough cut, but I'm going to use the leaf to keep it from sticking to the table, and we'll get it flopped over the other way, and I'll do final trimming, and we'll decide how to put it on the balloon. So let me get it cleaned up right now. I want to go around the edges and make sure that it feels unstuck all the way before I start to think about lifting this. Here. Well, I had a folded leaf, so that's a bit of a bummer, but maybe we can artistically trim this to make that look correct. I think taking the time to have these undulations is going to add to its realism. I mean, it's obviously not going to look super real, but I don't know. I think a softer, more undulating, natural edge looks nice. So now, just need to make sure there's nothing else I need to fix, and we'll flip it over onto the balloon. Now, I have done this where I've left the leaf on, so we could flip it all the way over, and I just put this right on top of the balloon. I'm not convinced that's the best move. In fact, I'm inclined to, well, let's just do it right now. Let's pull this off and see if we like what we have. And we'll let this stiffen up just a little bit before we put it on the balloon, because we're going to put it texture side down, and I don't want to have the surface of the balloon smudge that. Okay, I need to figure out what I'm going to do with this, how to finish that. I'm going to let this leather up, and then I'm going to come back before I put it on the balloon, and I'm just going to touch the edge with a sponge, and then we'll do it again when it's stiffer. But okay, I'll let that stiffen up, and I'll come back to you. Okay, so I've got it where I want it, and now I think I want to add a ring foot this time. The last time with those 3 stubby little feet, I really liked that, but I think it was going to rock. You know, it's a pretty wide dish, and just think it would be better if you're serving. I don't want it to be tippy. So I think I'm just going to do something like that. And normally I'd want to put this whole thing, I actually debated doing it, the balloon, the bucket, everything on the pottery wheel and spin it, but it's really top heavy, and I'm not convinced that I'm going to be able to get it to stick. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it. I'm going to do just a little bit of slip and score, stick it on here, and then we'll use a board to make sure it looks level. And I want to point out too that I did look at all the low spots, just take a side view and kind of move this thing around, turn it around, and make sure I don't have any. This is probably my lowest point in terms of, you know, if this was filled with water, where it spills out. So I kind of leveled this first, and then I'm going to try to level this just by eye with a board, and it'll be close enough. Now, of course, I could take the time and coil in, and maybe I will actually put a tiny coil on the inside, but I don't want to deal with the coil on the outside. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it look clean. I don't necessarily even want to blend it all in, but I'll come back now that I think about it and put a little coil in and smooth on the inside so this stays firmly attached. Now just use a wet finger and I'll rub this in. So here is the cabbage leaf out of the bisque fire. Had something that looks kind of like a crack that doesn't go all the way through right here, but other than that, it looks really good. No problems with the foot. It sits nice and flat. This is going to be good. So, next to glaze, and I'm just going to do this in a really simple white. I like the idea of the form of a leaf kind of standing out, but I don't want to try to make it a green, realistic looking leaf. It's unlikely I'd be happy with the exact green, and so I will be happy with it white, so that's what we're going to do. Okay, so that's kind of dried off. I've gone around and sponged off any drips that happened from the top pour. And I'm going to do this in sections. I don't want to go all the way around to one pour because it'll make the dripping to the inside of the bowl worse. So I'm going to take my time. This will go slow, and I'm going to go do it twice and then come in here and fill in the rest. So here it is out of the kiln. Man, I'm happy I did this in white. It filled in the cracks a bit, but the texture is nice. Not so deep that food will get caught in it, but I think it turned out really good, and it was a fun project, a fun use of a big old cabbage leaf from the garden. So I hope you enjoyed. I hope you try it yourself.